Thank you very much for your invitation. And so we are here to talk. I would like, so André introduced the benefit of sharing an experience. So I would like to share mine at EPFL. So about the PhD experience, it's about a certain period of time. So in my case, this a timeline. I start in 2017, January. You recognize here the 1 year period of the exam, and more or less it was 2.5 years before starting the doc mobility. I enjoy a 6 months doc mobility at the end of the thesis, and the final rush after this very nice mobility was 6 months of COVID-19 rush. So I was extremely focused on my thesis, but I was okay because anyone was focused on something quite strict at home. So I was rushing at this time. Good moment, probably. And it's also this experience supervised by the Professor Luca Ortelli in the former LCC Laboratory. So what is the purpose of the thesis? In French, de quoi la thèse est-elle l'objet, let's say. It's also a certain period, yes, but it's also an object. You know, the PhD is an object if you consider it as the contribution to be printed at the very end of the process. So PhD is the very ultimate goal is to finalize this object, or maybe it will not be totally finalized, or maybe it cannot be completely finalized, and we should accept that is something that is always open anyway. So you can consider, in my opinion, a PhD experience as a long quest, as also André was presenting, with a high ultimate goal to achieve. Or you can also consider this PhD experience as a frame or a step or a powerful context in which you are during a certain period, and maybe a context in which you can do what you like to do. And maybe I'm too optimistic, or actually they asked me to present a quite positive presentation at the end of the day, also to make you more confident for the next step. And it responds to the introduction of André in a quite complementary way. So at least you can consider this PhD as the moment that you can do what you wanted to do before arriving at EPFL, and precisely the things that you wanted to make and to achieve at the moment you apply. So in my case, I wanted to write about architecture and to practice teaching related to design processes. So I took this opportunity to write about architecture, about housing, about design, about practice, about the challenges of the discipline of architectural disciplines, about the megatrends, how it changed the way we are addressing the question of design. And I really enjoy teaching experience during my PhD moments, not as something aside, but really as a goal. At the very beginning in my interview, I wanted to address teaching as part of the inspiration for research. So actually, I spent my 3.5 years at EPFL doing what I wanted to do. Maybe to go ahead with the presentation. So I graduate in July 2013. So at the very left of the line, left side of the line. I practiced design before in Michel Gutmann's office in Paris from 2010, actually, aside from my studies in Marne-la-Vallée. I worked on collective buildings projects and urban design. So I enjoyed the territorial background of the School of Marne-la-Vallée in Paris, and I did my master with Eric Lapierre, which is professor here, Odile Seller and Jacques Lucan, former professor here at EPFL, on theory and project. I previously enjoyed writing on architecture, and specifically I did the mention recherche, a little bonus in the master on types revival in architecture. So I enjoyed doing architecture before, and I decided the goal of my PhD was also to continue what I wanted to do. And actually, after the thesis, I'm still doing the same. I'm still enjoying writing on architecture. I'm still deal with teaching with Luca Pataroni. with Paola Vigano on continuing education. I'm still practicing project in my way, maybe now in the administration in Geneva, in Canton Geneva. I'm now responsible of the project unit, responsable du pôle projet with Ariane Villemer, who is urbaniste cantonal of Geneva Canton. So I'm still dealing with internal training session dedicated to project issues. So more than an object, a PhD is probably a tool. And here I come back to André's metaphor about the house and the tool of the house. I would go even one step more. Maybe the thesis is also a tool. And sometimes we have also to forget the thesis because it's just a tool to be considered in a higher level in what you want to do, what you want to achieve. And a tool that has to be conceived and that has to be gathered and built step by step and during the PhD. So from this object, a tool that you like, probably thesis should start with something you have interest, of course. And so you have to be passionate of your topic, but maybe it's also important to cultivate some distances from your topic. Don't become too freak in a way. Passion can, in a way, isolate, and you have to stay open on your topic to easily talk about it to many people. Don't be so specific or so isolated in your passion or fully understanding of your topic. So the first hypothesis in my case was very large. It was the notion of the commons and an intuition from Luca Ortelli that maybe an hypothesis from Colin Rowe in Collage City has still not been totally studied. When they present the description of the city divide between the public and the private status, public space and private space. And we probably imagine at this moment that the very topic of the commons that have been studied by Eleanor Holstrom was challenging this duality of reading the city. So from this very little first hypothesis, the several methods were first a sort of double state of art. One from the commons as a topic, as a topical topic, as something that is very much discussed in many ways, seminars, publications. It has been the very topicality of the notion was in 2017 at just before probably the top of the trend. So one state of the art was focusing on this notion, and the other state of the art was regarding architecture and see how they overlap and what are the gaps between the two. So I was very aware about all the possibility to submit abstract. That was my strategy because Commons was in the à la mode, in the mood. And every occasion I could submit an abstract, I did it. And I became a sort of yes man, always opening to everything, since it was very a topical notion. So it was also a way to see how topical was. And through the submitting abstract, it was a sort of live assessment of the topic. And actually it was quite positive because it was not so difficult to be accepted than to do the abstract. The full paper was always more difficult, but the topic was quite well seen from the editors or call for participations. So the very first aspect when you see a so wide topic was, for me, the focus on design tools. And at a certain moment, you can be totally lost in this huge amount of references. And when you start any state of art, you can lose yourself many times. So I always focus, and Luca Ortelli was really helpful also to and really attentive to that, about always coming back to the design tools when the relation to project practice was entering. So the very first approach in my candidacy exam, but maybe I remember, and I put the timeline just to give some ideas about how the process can change. I start in the Rencontre de l'EDAR 80s, so 1 year after the beginning, about these 5 principles. So the first approach was reading from 5 principles. This is what I defend on the exam and what I discuss in the first year. And in the second year, I remember, and I took that from the Rencontre de l'EDAR 19. So every year you are changing a bit more. You're articulating and accumulating materials. So you present the proposal in many ways. And the main difficulty was to categorize the reading and the sub-question of the thesis. So here was one of the steps. But I would say that the doc mobility, and now we approach the rush moment at the very end of the process of the thesis, let's say, it arrived later, but it offered a lot of distances on my work. And from Brussels, I solved the main dilemma I had between horizontality and verticality. And I found some confidence in the very figure of the umbrella, assuming that a thesis looking to the topicality of one notion, the commons, that could allow to read the main question of the discipline from this specific point of view, was a set of position, assuming this figure of the umbrella. Another point of this doc mobility, I did realize that accumulating some papers and contributions that were reflecting the topicality and the way each topical question were asking for answer or maybe question, it gave me also the feedbacks with all the materials I had, that the thesis could be a thesis by articles. And this is something that engineers used to do. They publish some articles, they put the articles all after the others, and they just it's a lot, but they just, in the engineer's culture, they just write an introduction to the several papers. At a certain moment, Luca Ortelli proposed me to do so really directly, like engineers, but I was not engineers, and I wanted to build the narrative. So from all the publications, so this is the result of being a yes man during the thesis, I start to propose abstract to answer to call for paper 6 months or maybe 4 months after starting the PhD, really as a way to write. I also consider, as Andre said, that writing, it's a way of researching. So by writing, I was thinking. So I start to write and to submit some proposal from the beginning, and during all the process, the proceed of the thesis. So in Brussels, I did consider that this material could be reorganized and could assume the form of several narratives that all together build the thesis. And because I'm an architect, I wanted not to just add an introduction, but to re-articulate all these articles being rewrite in some places or reintroduce or connected to have this 8 narrative. So this was the point just before the rush. Coming back from the doc mobility, I start to write having these 8 chapters to complete. So I knew what I wanted to achieve 6 months after before submitting the thesis. At this moment, and because it was also the lockdown and the COVID, I still continue being a yes man while writing, because one of the topic was really one of the points of the thesis was really taking a new light regarding the situation of the lockdown of of a city completely focusing on the dwelling and putting all the collective and the common space of the city aside. So I just proposed an article in one media, in press, and because when you start to answer to a question, all the journalists wanted to continue, and it was a certain bubble. So I was just finishing the thesis, and on the same time, and I was answering a lot of asking for a contribution in the press, not to scientifics, but to the mass. And actually, it was really helpful because I already lived the thesis as something not given, but as something that can be used to express something and to answer to some collective questions. So it's light because it's the press, it's the television, the radios, a lot of local press or asking for the light of EPFL students, PhD students. But actually, it was part of the process of making this thesis a tool that can help to speak about a lot of things to many publics and many occasions. So I really enjoy also this part. It was also changing a bit the routine of writing. I was also writing, but for a lighter format. So cutting little pieces has been always my strategy. And to finalize this thesis that have been defended in July and submit in July, defend in August, and print and publicly defend in September, I come back to the object. From September, from the beginning of the rush, I immediately conceived the thesis as an object, and editing was part of the process, as writing was during all the period of the PhD, was helpful, considering writing as a way of thinking. Well, editing in the last 6 months became a main vector, a main mode, something really helpful that gave me also energy, because at a certain moment you start to be a bit exhausted about your own thesis. So thinking about editing as, for me, as a personal, maybe a personal reason, but gave me energy. So I stopped working on Word and I switched on InDesign probably 3 months after the beginning of the rush period. So writing has been half on Word and the second half directly on my object. Considering also the relation from the images to the text, it was very helpful to see also the goal and the end at the very end of the quest. And actually conceiving the PhD with these pieces, with this narrative and this chapter, and also thinking directly editing while writing the thesis have been very helpful to publish 1 year after the PhD with Métis Press Geneva. So I really, it really makes the publication easier, to conceive this thesis as such. I just want to remember that probably the PhD is just a tool, so that the tools of what you like to do, and probably I enjoy the fact that I could use, I still enjoy the fact that this tool, that these chapters still offer me many possibilities to interact with many topics and to continue doing the same I wanted to do, talking about projects in many contexts, in many different ways. And I just wish you to continue the same after your experience of the PhD, to just enjoy what you are doing and to find a way to continue as such. Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Valentin. Thank you also to Andrea that it's online. I think that I ask you some kind of patience. I think that we can have 15 minutes of discussion. And I think that you are plenty of questions to discuss with them. I enjoyed both presentations personally, and I think it's very helpful because, you know, when, especially me, I talk by myself, I'm at the end of the PhD, and it's my last year. And I'm starting to confront myself and how can I edit my thesis? And I'm working with archives, with interviews, with human design, and how to put it on the paper. It's a big challenge. And it's really scary, you know, in a certain point, when you have really to materialize 3-4 years of research in a piece of paper. So I think it's very useful to see and to confront these two experiences and understand what is the challenge, what is the steps that we take to make it come true, right? So please, it's up to you to make some questions.
Thank you to both for your advice. Positive. We finished in 4 years, so we would. No, it was actually my question, I guess, right now is to Valentin, because I don't know if this is specific to the area of research, but I was wondering how. I've heard from other sources, other ex-PhD students, that it's important to save all of your research and then publish something right before you present your final work that you defend, like you said. And I'm not exactly sure why this is, and then so then for you to say, like, I'm putting an abstract in every single column, saying, and I'm like, this, yes, ma'am, and do this. So and it seems like it was very helpful to you to actually be able to compile all of this. But I was wondering if you know the other side to that, or if you also.
It's true that the publication, it's a huge pressure now that the professor and academia are putting on scientists to publish, like something quite yeah. I personally took this constraint as something positive, as something that can help me, probably because of the specificity of my topic. So it was a certain way of testing some hypotheses to submit. It's like a certain. It was like a peer review. A huge peer review experience. No, it was always, what about the comments in this topic? What about the comments in this? So it was probably related to my very specific topic. And otherwise, you can easily consider this pressure as something a bit not negative, but cutting the time of reflection, of deep understanding of the thing. So it was anyway one of the dilemma I had between verticality and horizontality. I feel sometimes not confident in being not so specialist of all these topics, but at a certain moment, okay, and why not? I will be the one that treats the question in another way. So probably it's something really specific to the topic, I assume. Yeah. But probably you can play with the rules in a way, not suffer from this pressure of this academic pressure. Also because you have anyway a lot of reasons and aspects that push you pressure, including your supervisor, but your colleagues, even your friends can destabilize yourself implicitly or maybe even explicitly. In a fair way, but sometimes also in a quite violent way, because you can be lost in your methods. So probably academia is putting so many pressures that you can yourself cultivate some personal feeling and pleasure. And so writing and submitting was a pleasure at the moment. So if not, you can just maybe try to find some safe place in which you can feel confident and to not be stuck as André was talking. I don't know if you have the same feeling, André.
Well, my feeling with academic publishing in architecture is very bleak. So I don't know if you want me to say anything. Well, one thing I don't know if I should say it and demoralize everyone, but one thing that I've certainly noticed is that well, we're writing more than ever. We're reading less than ever too. There's no time to read everything that's produced. This is a general discussion with amongst young people and teaching and doing research in architectural history, theory, and criticism. The rate of citations for architectural papers is depressing. I mean, the number of papers that are actually cited to begin with is extremely reduced, which makes sense if you think about the field you're writing in, where a great number of people are practitioners. They don't have time to read all these academic papers, right? But there's an opportunity there as well to find other ways of communicating our research. And Valentin was talking about his outreach initiatives. One silver lining in this is that outreach initiatives have been more and more valued in job applications and funding applications as something important. So finding new ways of conveying that information is important. Publishing and writing definitely, even as a personal process, but other ways too. And architecture is very rich in that. Exhibitions, for example, we love our talks or conferences, like in this context, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm André. Valentin, thank you so much for your presentations that are really inspiring. I have a bit of an unusual question, I guess. So I guess we have assessed that this career is a bit stressful and it's not 9 to 5 and it's kind of like part of our life now. So I was just curious to know what were your strategies for just having a break from it and just having, stepping away from the writing or the reading. Because like Walter Benjamin used to say, I think he was a man of mind, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like whenever he had an inspiration and wanted to write, he would pause and hold it and then come back to it. So I wonder whether you cultivated in these 4 years, even like nice hobbies or nice strategies to actually cope with the stress and the pressure of doing something that you really love and that's giving you purpose, but can also be quite daunting because it's always with you.
I personally practice aviron, rolling. One of the most complete sport because you muscle yourself, you take sun, you can see the beauty of the lake, but also you can see the lakeshore and these little boxes and this little house and the way the green infrastructure is developing on the lakeshore, and you can start working, but in another way. So it was really helpful to just open the box, but still having a case study just here. So it's probably my tip. Okay, you went to the gym, no?
Also, yeah, blow off some steam and frustration at the end of the day. Well, before answering the question, I think you touched on a very important point, especially in the contemporary architectural culture, the need for this moment of relaxation as actually part of methodology. If you don't think about methodology just in a narrow sense, but in a broader sense that pretty much affects your whole life, this is essential. I mean, we dive very deep in our research, but we do need moments of coming to the surface, taking a breath, to keep doing our job well. And I found that those moments can actually be incredibly productive for research afterwards. Not relaxing to do research, which is a little bit obsessive and stressed, and you're stressing to have a good time when you relax. But it gets you out of that of the bubble of the obsession of the work you're dealing with and gives you other perspectives. One example that I that I'm very fond of is, well, I'm sure everyone in Switzerland is skiing, which I absolutely loved doing while I was there. And curiously, from skiing, I got a very important insight into my own research. By learning the basics of skiing, at some point, you have to let go of full control. So you can't have this entire control of, I'm going to stop immediately. I can stop at this moment. I can the moment I think something is dangerous, I can stop, and that's it. If you do that, you won't go anywhere. You'll be stuck. Eventually, you'll be in those very flat areas where you just have to use your arms or just walk and get there, and it's exhausting. You have to gain speed and lose control at some point. And eventually I sat down to do my research and I realized, actually I should do that here too. I'm not entirely sure of everything that I'm saying, but I won't get anything written if I think that every single sentence will be right from the start. So let me pick up some speed. Let me start writing. Let me start thinking about that. And that helped. So here's a mix of a relaxation with impact on research.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you. It's reminded me of a very interesting book by Jean, who talks exactly about this. Well, the book is from the 50s, and it's a very old kind of professor at the Sorbonne. And he actually talks about, very much in the spirit of this afternoon session, it's like kind of useful advice or useful tips of how to deal with the intellectual work. And even advice of how to organize your desk and how to clean the room around you, how to rest is one of the chapters actually. Yeah. And he calls this orchestrated relaxation. So you have to plan the time to rest so you can feel energized again and come back to your work. If you find it, I don't know if it's because I always recommend it to my students, but it's not translated into English, so you can read French. If you find it, this is a treasure. This is a treasure box, I would say, with different tips. And about relaxation, it's not a joke. I mean, it's based on real examples of mainly writers, poets, but also political figures like Napoleon. And he was saying, like, Napoleon used to sleep in the middle of a battle. So he had like proper naps at lunchtime in the middle of very important battles. And anecdotes like this, but they're also very useful tips of how to keep a notebook, how to organize your thoughts, how to constantly think, but also how to produce this kind of detachment that you were talking about. I actually, as I have the microphone and it's working, I have a little question to Andre. Thank you for bringing this example in Wittgenstein, which is very useful. But as you know, also in the 20s, there was another house built in Vienna, yeah, very close to Kurbangasse, and this is the Villa Müller, yeah, of Adolf Loos. And it's a very different story, very different example, yeah, of creativity and approach to creative thinking. Because let's not forget that Wittgenstein was a philosopher, but he was initially trained as engineer, actually in Manchester. Yeah, it's a coincidence, yeah. But this explains why he was so obsessed with the structural characteristics of space, with purity, with measurements, with the exact kind of proportions of materials. And this obsession with the house is with this kind of mathematical scientific precision is exactly what made the house sick at the end, because it's not the house you can enjoy, right? And I guess you're heading towards this direction as well, obsessive, being obsessed with your work, which is also what Valentin was saying. It's good to have the passion, but not get, don't take it into kind of extreme obsession of wanting to be perfect, of aiming to perfectionism. And actually, perfectionism can sicken the work. And that Adolf Loos's example of the house of the Villa Müller produced at the same time is actually illustrates a very different approach to design, but also to creative thinking, right? It's not the perfect planning of things or the perfect kind of measurements and precisions and forms, but it's a playful attitude. It's about being okay with the mistakes we make and learning from those mistakes and trying to adjust to those kind of mistakes and experiment with things and learn from those experiments. So it's exactly the opposite attitude of the Wittgenstein's approach to the house. And I think this contrast would be also quite helpful, having this kind of obsessive perfectionism and see how this can lead to something, but also having kind of more relaxed, and of course a lot of relaxation in the relaxed attitude to learning, but also to experimentation, to mistakes, to looking at other sources, the arts, of films, of literature, novels, opening our minds so we can experiment and explore the topic we are passionate about with fresh eyes. So just wanted to bring this into the discussion, but maybe Andre, you have a different interpretation of these two houses from the beginning of the century.
Okay, you are mute. Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing up Wittgenstein. It's a great pretext to just start talking about it. Well, I know it's late, so I won't talk too much. It's on a side note, this is one of the methodological difficulties of a talk like this. I'm actually really actively working on Wittgenstein right now and writing extensively and in detail about the house. But I talked to you about it for 3 or 4 minutes to make use of that insight for something else. So I'm so happy that now I can add a couple more minutes about the house. I think you're entirely right. Although I have difficulty in actually knowing where to start to talk about the house, because it fits so. It's an ill fit in any canon that you might look for. And I think that's also one of the reasons why when we talk about Vienna at this time with all its architectural accomplishments, the Wittgenstein house is pretty much forgotten because it doesn't quite fit in the discourse. It doesn't react to things in the right way. So for example, talking about Loos, Paul Engelman was worked, the architect, the actual architect in this process, studied under Loos. Wittgenstein knew Adolf Loos, and there's this famous exchange where Loos actually tells Wittgenstein, "You are me." The similarity between the philosophy and architecture. And I think that's tainted a lot of the interpretations of the house, which tried to go looking for Adolf Loos in the house, but then the set of references are completely different. Paul Wiedewelt, who's written the best book, most detailed book on the house, points out how in many ways it's somewhat reactionary, because it's a reproduction. It's a modern vocabulary for the reproduction of the old family palace of the Wittgenstein family. The Wittgenstein family, by the way, was one of the richest in Europe, and they were so rich that to this day, the family lives off the dividends of the fortune they made at that time. So this house, which seems incredibly simple, actually tries to reproduce some of those spaces. It tries to recreate an aristocratic mood after World War I, when the monarchy has collapsed. So it seems out of touch in that sense. It seems like it's very there are no ornaments, so we think about Loos, but it was so expensive to make because things like the heaters took multiple attempts, multiple companies to develop them down to the millimeter. So it's a very it's almost a very rich person's playground to deal with the house. It is something else. It's also the work of an amateur. We got to put it that way too. We recognize a lot of the mistakes that architecture students do in their first, second, third year in studio in this house, in that obsessive attitude too. So it's deceivingly it seems like it's similar to Loos in a very deceiving way, but then it's a very different kind of work. And the fact is that Loos and Wittgenstein had a falling off at some point. So no, I don't think there's an attempt of Wittgenstein to copy Loos, but there is something stylistic in the air of Vienna of the time that's reflected in Wittgenstein's work too. Thank you for bringing that up.
What time is it, Andrea, in New York?
It's 12:30, so we still have a long time until 6 o'clock. We can keep talking.
It's the time of Terror now.
There's Any other question? Actually, I
you
have
have
some
one.
questions. The first one, just really 5 minutes, guys. The first one is, when is the time to find another job when you're finished your PhD? Because it's something that no one talks about. And I'm very curious about when is the time to start searching for a postdoc, or maybe to go into the market with your research. Because as I said, I'm in the 40th year and I'm starting to think, and next, what can I do? If I will continue doing research, if I became a lecturer in some other place in the world, or if I do a postdoc, or if I go to the market. You see, this is one question. The other question is, maybe we have this open question. What are your strategies in this confusing world to concentrate yourselves and writing your thesis? Do you isolate yourselves in a certain point of this writing period? Because I know that in we have a lot of contacts, and we have a lot of friends that calls you to do this and that. And I'm in the 40th year, but organize an event just right now. So you see, you have a lot of activities that maybe can distract you for the final writing period. How you can deal with it, and what was your strategy to really writing on the rush, as Valentin presented? Thank you.
For me, it will be short. The second question.
Yes.
COVID-19 puts me on a quite nice situation of no temptations, no temptations, zero. So I was focusing just because of that. I don't know you, Andre.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm taking the question on writing because it's easier than the other question. Writing wise, I'd say very similarly that there are two scales of moments. There are definitely months where I'm far more enmeshed in thinking and writing and developing a new project. And then there's a moment where I want to discuss it and communicate it, where I think it's stable enough for that conversation. But then there's the daily routine too. And I really make an issue normally of just taking a big chunk of the morning just for reading and writing. No phones, no emails, no nothing. You're in it. There are no distractions. You're just doing that. Then you come out of it on the other side at the end of the day, and then go talk to people about what you've done, and that's fun. Otherwise, the work question is very difficult. It depends on the deadlines of what you're applying to. Some grants, like the Swiss National Science Foundation's grants are fantastic. They have very specific deadlines and a long waiting period. So probably a year before you actually want to start that, you have to start applying, which is difficult because you're still working on your thesis. So how are you're going to think about what you're going to do afterwards? It's not easy. Again, there's not really a solution for that. Also, some positions that appear are very circumstantial, and that's the thing I want to point out before I stop talking. Circumstantial events can be very important. Just happening, the coincidence of talking to people in a certain context, or meeting them, or discussing a certain work here and there, that can open a lot of possibilities. 90% of the time it won't, but there's a moment where actually something just clicks, and it's like, oh, actually we're looking for someone who has that, who teaches that, or who has that kind of background, and suddenly there you are. So try everything, apply to everything that seems remotely relevant, and good luck.
I would just add for this aspect, if you just consider the thesis as a tool and as a certain period, you should still think about the next during the PhD, and keep some time not to write, but also to think about the next step. If not, and it can help also to finalize the thesis probably. So just at the very end of the thesis, when I was asking for contribution in the press, it was an exercise of verification for the thesis and a good way to meet some people. So even private companies asked me to present the thesis before it has been defended in Geneva in one of the most luxurious hotels. So I was presenting a bit some hypotheses. Okay, see you maybe. You can open some possibilities during the thesis. Don't wait for having a satisfaction of the object to now I can go, and no, it's part of the process to just meet some people, to create some occasion. I think it's just to be optimistic as well.
Thank you both so much for your contributions. It was really inspiring, very reassuring as well. Yeah, thank you so much for
Thank you for your
presentation.
Thank you.